Hey there! In this video I made a little oil drum out of polymer clay with a little tea light fire in it and a bit of wood, and I popped it on a tiny little diorama. It's quick and easy, and you could do these drums at different sizes depending on the cylinder that you use to put your clay on. But it's nice and quick and quite realistic, and they're very robust as well, so it's a good one. So I hope you get something out of this, and I hope you enjoy the video. I just chose to use a sort of an earthy, rust-coloured polymer clay to make it convenient. Rolled it into a sausage just to make sure that the length and shape would be convenient for wrapping around the cardboard tubing. I made it to the thickness I thought that, an oil drum would be, and got to sizing it up. It's pretty straightforward stuff, this, and then just wrap it around. Cut the edges nice and straight and meet them together. And then just cut it there as close as you can to it, making a seam. And you just seal it together using whatever. Your fingers are probably best for this, depending how soft the clay is. Smooth it over. That's just your cylinder ready to start making some impressions with. I used the handle of this knife because it was the right width to make what would look like ridges on the drum. Obviously, whatever size drum you're making, you would choose a tool that would be utilised in the same way. And even the ridges on something like this you could use to make a different style drum that has a lot more ridges in it. But I used the handle so I could just roll it round and round, trying to do a sort of a smooth motion. If you had a really long tool, you could probably do this in one nice smooth movement. But I kind of had to fiddle around because this is the width I wanted, so I had to play with it. It takes a little bit of practice to do this because you need pressure on the left side and then on the right side, so it'll push down at the angle that you want, just to make that ridge at the top and in the centre and at the bottom as well. You can see once I get the right amount of pressure going, it starts to form. This was my second go at doing this, so I'm not too good at it, but I think if you did this a few times, you'd probably make a bit of an assembly line with them, and you could do them so quickly. I like how they cover that ridge sitting there in the centre. It just looks so good. It looks a bit beat up too, which is not a bad thing. If you wanted to make a drum that was sort of, had big dents and stuff in it too, you could probably make an indentation in your cardboard and then just push it down. Or even flatten one end. That looks good though. It's so easy. And then I just made some holes to allow light through. When you do this, you need to make the hole bigger because I found with the first one that I made, you could barely see the light flickering through. And also with the holes, you want to make sure most of them are at the bottom because, you make the holes so they're like flues, not flue, so the air will, siphon through so the fire can breathe. So you kind of want to add that realism to it as well. I just used the rough, broken end of a skewer to make tiny little indentations. That's what I like about this clay, is because you can use such great little simple tools to make excellent realistic detail. And this is something you couldn't achieve with cardboard. You'd have to paint in the detail. And just widen them back out again. Push them back down and they'll just keep shrinking, and then you've got to keep just opening them back up again. It's your opportunity to not just rough it up, but also neaten it. If the edge is a little too thick like there, just sort of manipulate it, push it around, reshape it while making detail and making it kind of look rougher when you're actually neatening it up. Also, you want to make, or if you want to make a little base for it, although the bottom of it. The light that I used, I just used the housing off it and cut it out, a little round from it, and then baked it with the drum. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I've got cardboard stuck inside it, and the solution I came up with was to drop it in water. I had it soak for about 2 hours, and almost all of it came out. If you did it overnight, it'd probably just fall out on its own. This is a great way of getting out. If you made a smaller one with, say, using steel piping, you'd probably have to figure out a way to do this, like wrapping it in foil or something. But this is effective for the size that I want to make. And you can get smaller cylindrical, cardboard tubing, so see what you can find. Now it's ready to assemble. The little light, you could have it on its own in the bottom, even if you just painted the bottom, but I want to be able to replace the light over time. This is it in the dark. You can see, and you want to check that the holes are big enough. You can't really see them in the light, but you can see them now. It's not too bad. I sprayed this with a primer, and I must not have baked it long enough, so the plastics inside this stopped it from curing. I probably didn't even need to spray it, to be honest. But to get it to cure, I just put some corn flour on it, and that will immediately cure the paint. And then you just dust it off as best you can, because there was no way that I was going to get that paint to dry with the plastic not being baked, or the polymer clay not being baked long enough in the oven. It would never have happened. But the corn flour works fantastically. It's so fine. Talc would probably do the same job, I would assume. I did some grey on this. I filmed it, and well, I didn't film it. I forgot to press play. I thought I did, and I didn't. So here's me pretending to paint it grey. I just stippled it on lightly and roughly. You don't want to put paint on like painting a wall. Just be nice and rough and into the rust colours, just these three. I start out with the darkest and I work my way to the lightest. Using the same brush, I didn't even wash it, but it's a really nice feathery kind of dry hard brush, this one. I just really want to the impression of brown, not just painting it on. I always use brushes that are far too big for jobs that I need to do, because I find I get a better realistic effect. I think it's because of lack of brush strokes. I use my hands a lot too. I'm kind of taking paint away while dispersing it with my hands. Of course, you wouldn't do this if you used oil-based paints, because that'd be messy. Just get heavier as I go, kind of layering it up little bit by little bit. There's nothing too fancy about this. I'm not really making anything intentional. I'm just kind of filling it where I think it needs to be done. Just dabbing my finger all over it just to remove those bits that are just a little bit too heavy. And onto the red. Yeah, and a little bit on the inside too, though it could be mostly black because it'd look like soot. And then after the red, I just do the orange in smaller amounts, of course, than the initial brown, and then red. And after I do this, I keep getting smaller and smaller over the areas that I've done, so it's just layering up and getting slightly lighter and slightly lighter. You can see that's starting to now look actually like rust. I like how the the cornflower looks like bits of ash and that sort of thing sitting in the holes. Though maybe it's the grey paint. Looks good. Now I'm just sort of putting it on little tiny spits and spats and just barely touching the brush to it, so it's nice thick amounts of that nice orange terracotta kind of colour. Just really highlighting the rust. It's one of those jobs you could just get lost in and keep doing it. It's quite enjoyable. To help create with the appearance of fire, I've used some cellophane paper. This orange one, I think yellow would be alright, clear possibly. I wouldn't use something like a red because it'd probably look very strange, but it's more about it reflecting light, the flickering light from the little candle itself or the tea light itself. You don't really want it poking out, but it will help the illusion that light is moving around inside of it. Some broken bits of skewers and sticks and whatnot, stain them like I do with everything. And with this light, you just pop it in the bottom, leave it like that, or you can drop it in the top. That's the two ways of doing it. This one's, I'm going to make it so I can actually pull this in and out with the little sticks and the cellophane attached. So I can drop that out, change the light when it runs out, and then just drop it all back in. I just used a bit of tape on the bottom of this. I probably should have been a bit neater and used some hot glue or something. But it's not so bad. I won't be changing this very often anyway. And just poke it down in there so it's below the top of the barrel or the drum. And I'm going to use some really, really good thick glue and just drop it down there in a little well that I've made that obviously you wouldn't want it touching the actual light itself because you want to take it away. It's kind of like a vase and I'm going to be arranging flowers in it. I just want to put the glue down inside and then pop these in there in an arrangement that I find good for this, and that way when they all sit together and it all is dry, I can just pop this piece in and out whenever I need to. There are so many ways you could do this too. I mean, you could put a hole in the bottom, a smaller hole, just that the little light globe would fit through. There's many ways of sorting this for yourself. It's also good to think about the arrangement of the wood, because it too will actually use light to travel upward to give that effect, and you can see what looks like flickering fire. It's all about being mindful of how it's going to look when you're arranging it. You see it running up. The lighter the wood would be, the more light it's going to catch and the more you'll be able to see it as well. It looks quite good, I like it. It looks quite real. For a bit of plastic and sticks and wood and yeah, it's good. This little soap dish base that I got from a cheap shop, bit of XPS foam that I've cut at an angle roughly. I stained it up with a bit of dark wash. I fixed the sides later and I put some soil on it that I have baked in the oven to kill anything that is bacterial that might grow later. Unless you want mushrooms growing, give it a bake first. I'm going to start trying to arrange things on this so I know how I want it to sit. I did put a little bit of static grass on, and I'm going to place the drum there, and all these different bits of wood and some leftover plants that I'd made from another video, and tiny bits of charcoal that I made from XPS foam that I chopped up into itty bitty little squares. I'm going to put them on sort of in a nice sort of fashion so everything's nice and balanced. But first I want to make things a little bit dirty. So I use a dirty wash that I use on everything. It's just an acrylic black and brown wash. And let it soak into the foam. It just kind of makes everything look sort of richer and saturated, and shadow and dirt and all those wonderful things that you find that naturally occur. I normally would put the object down and do this, but I didn't want too much around the base of the drum, so I did this first. And then I put it down and I did it again. Once again with that really thick acrylic glue. And just put it down. And now I'm going to tie it down again with some more of this. I like how it makes the ground look damp. It depends how much you put on, but it can make it look really earthy and damp, and it's great. I really like it. Oh, bit of wet glue there I should avoid touching. This is my favourite job, I think, just dropping down this sort of stuff. I don't know, it's just something really, really nice about it. It's like when a plan comes together, that's what it feels like. I'm just going to sort of decide where to lay these down, and I'm going to sort of layer them so the different colours of wood that I've used are going to be slightly in contrast to each other, so they look a little more three-dimensional, not just, a few lumps of wood laying there. Once again, it's about being mindful of where you place things. I struggled with figuring out where to put flowers because it doesn't seem like one of those things you'd put flowers on, but it needed something because it felt out of balance with that big drum at the back there. It's sort of everything's slightly out of whack. So I decided on these little yellow wildflowers that I made. They're in another video. I'll leave a link underneath for you to have a look if you want to see how I made the flowers. Just poke a nice hole into the foam. Normally I just put some water-based glue in and then pop them in. I push them down really deep because I don't want it to be too off balance. That little flower sticking out on its own. There's a void now, you can see it. The front needs to be filled. Just found an old decal that I used, I think, from the zombie roadkill video, and because I had no newspaper ones left, so I just used this one. I dirtied it up with the same wash, screwed it up a little bit, and just made it look like an old piece of newspaper. And just try and fill that emptiness of the front. Even though there's a nice little angle going down, it still feels really, really empty. I just sort of keep moving things around, playing with them until they feel like they're in the right place. And finally just get some glue on it and put it down where I'm happy with it. It can be hard to decide sometimes with these things, especially once you know it's not going to come back off. I'm going to dirty the ground up even more now, so it looks like there's ash and soot and charcoal and everything laying around the base of this drum. I'm just using a very, very soft pencil. It's not quite waxy, but it's very, very soft lead. You could use paint, of course, to do this, but it's just to give more depth and dirt again. I just rub the pencil harder closer to the drum and lighter as it moves away. It gives a nice effect. Use a bit more grey that I used on the drum as well, and I'm just going to drop it down like light bits of ash that are laying around. You want to be very light-handed with this. Lumps of it won't look like ash, it'll just look like weird lumps of grey paint. And being such a light colour, it'll be very stark and unnatural looking. Just adding a little more again. As you can see, I'm doing it inside where I've already done, so it looks a little more dense on the inside. Just my little tiny bits of XPS foam stained with the same dirty wash, and they are just cut into little tiny sort of squares, because you know charcoal, it has that square nature about it. And I just dip them into little bits of glue, and it's one of those jobs that it's frustrating on such a tiny scale. Plan B and try and get the glue onto them without them gluing to everything else but the diorama. This was a struggle as well. I just ended up putting little dabs of glue on and sprinkling them on. And that's all there is to making this one. It was a nice little build, and I love the detail. I hope you got something out of this, and I'll see you next time.